Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So today I got a fun and interesting episode for you guys this evening because we're doing a review of the new Miyoo Flip. It's a clamshell Game Boy Advance SP style handheld device that's got two analog sticks inside of it, making it a good candidate for Dreamcast on the go. Because don't get me wrong, I love my Steam Deck, but honestly, unless you got a pair of Genko jeans from the 90s, it's nothing you're ever going to put in your pocket. And even if the Flip might not be the most comfortable thing for a pocket, it definitely would fit. But all jokes aside, you guys keep asking for reviews on these emulation handhelds, so I figured I'd try one more on the channel because you guys always ask, but you don't always watch. And as far as the Miyoo Flip is concerned, it is a quite fun device. It is a small portable, so we're going to go over it, do the unboxing, talk about the build quality, the screen quality, the controls, as well as what it's going to run effectively. And the nice thing is I don't actually have to put the specs on screen for you. Miyoo was nice enough to put them on the back of the box. You got a Cortex A55 at 1.8 gigahertz. You've got a 640 by 480 screen IPS and 1 gigabyte of RAM. Those are really going to be the important specs there. And just taking a look at the box in and of itself, it did come in slightly damaged, but that's not the manufacturer's fault. The Chicago Postal Service basically treats packages like they owe them money. I don't think I've ever received anything that didn't have at least one dent inside of it. And I do like that it comes in a nice carrying case as well for the price, because obviously this is something you might want to actually throw in a case if you're going to throw it in a bag, because let's be honest, no one's actually putting this thing in their pocket. But if you want to give it a try, you do you. If you're happy, I'm happy. But what really matters is what's inside the Miyoo case, not what the actual case is made out of. It's sturdy enough, you'll be happy with it if you pick one of these up. But honestly, it's the handheld device inside that we need to check out, make sure the build quality is good, and see whether or not it is a recommend. And obviously it comes with an instruction manual as well, which no one's ever going to read whatsoever. I've never read one, and I'm not going to start today. But the nice thing is you get a decent amount of accessories along for the ride as well. Obviously you get a charging cable, that's pretty much par for the course, but it did come with a screen protector as well, which is nice, even though this is a clamshell design, and this screen by default is definitely going to be protected when you close it. If you did close some sort of piece of grit or dirt inside of the clamshell, it's nice that you have that screen protector there, and you also have the USB stick. So it does come relatively kitted out, and that is a great thing, and it goes right in the case when you're done, so you basically just protect your investment even if it isn't that much expense in the first place. And here is the handheld in and of itself. It has that classic Super Nintendo colorway vibe going on. You're going to get a D-pad, you're going to get 4 face buttons, start and select, the actual menu button, as well as the 2 analog sticks. And the analog sticks are quite nice. I was surprised by how much I like these, because I was kind of concerned them being down at the bottom of the case, as well as being a little bit smaller than a standard analog stick might make them hard to use, but I was actually pleasantly surprised by almost all of the controls. I'd say the D-pad is better than acceptable. It's in like the 8 out of 10 range. The A, B, X, Y buttons feel good, and at the bottom you're going to get a headphone jack as well as a USB-C port. A lot of times you're going to want to use the headphones with these devices. But it really did come down to the analog stick feel for me. If an analog stick isn't precise, if it doesn't feel good in the hand, it really isn't going to matter whether or not it's on there. You're just not going to want to use it. But the nice thing is on the Flip, it is responsive. It centers back in on itself very quickly. It has everything you need out of an analog stick to run the devices that this handheld is going to run. Now on the top, you're going to get R1 and R2 as well as L1 and L2. They have a nice tactile click. You're also going to get a mini HDMI port as well as another USB-C. And you might have to pick up a mini HDMI cable for this, but honestly they're pretty cheap on Amazon. I've got a couple in my drawer. I think I paid like $5 or $6 a piece. And honestly, the feel in the hand, as far as the buttons are concerned, it's quite good. It's not going to be arcade stick quality or something like a Sega Saturn D-pad anytime soon, but it does the job. You also get a volume rocker as well as 2 micro SD card slots. The one on the right is the one that I had populated, but you do have the ability to do dual SD cards, which is always a nice touch. And I would say this is actually relatively well molded. It's pretty easy to get the micro SD card in and out, and that isn't always the case whatsoever. But the big question on all of these devices is the hinge. Does the hinge feel good? Does it leave the screen where it's supposed to? Is it going to flop around when you move it? Because if you're holding this thing in your hand and the screen's wiggling back and forth, that's not going to be a very fun experience. Now I can only speak to how this is coming out of the box. Obviously it's a newer device, so there's not a ton of long-term testing, but the hinge feels solid. When I pick it up and jiggle it in my hand, it really isn't going anywhere. So at least out of the box, the hinge is doing the job, and I really have no remarks about it in the negative. And of course, it does have a screen protector out of the box as well, so you know full well I got to give you that peel porn right here. As we actually get into the menu, it is nicely laid out. This is the stock OS, and of course all of these things are going to be upgradable to different operating systems, and you do have nice settings as well, brightness modes, everything you would want, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, if you want to hook up a controller, everything like that. LCD frequency, not quite sure what's going on here, 10, 12, 25, and 40 kilohertz, and then 800 hertz. It's a very weird measurement. I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to actually indicate on the refresh rate. Those numbers are just a little bit off to me, but otherwise you can do everything you want. You can change the themes, you can use Emulation Station, you can change the hibernation functions. It really gives you the ability to kind of dial in what you want settings wise. And obviously we're here for games. You don't buy these devices because you want to have a nice settings menu. You buy them because you want to play some games on the go. And if you do want to pick one up, there's a link in the description below. It is not an affiliate link. Yes, this unit was sent in for review with no preconditions whatsoever. I'm allowed to say whatever I want, but I do want you guys to know that just so everyone's on the same page. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by the performance in Dreamcast. That's what I really wanted to check out the most. I was thinking to myself, if I could actually get a very small portable handheld Dreamcast with analog sticks on it, I would be stoked at the price point. Now do keep in mind that I shoot everything at 24 frames per second, not at 60 frames per second. So if you notice that the footage looks a little bit different on your television screen, that is because that's how I shoot it. I just hate the look of 60p, but I was checking the frame rates, and Dreamcast, at least in Cosmic Smash, was running 100% of the full frame rate that you would see on an actual Dreamcast or in any other emulation device that can run full speed. Additionally, you know, if you watch the channel, I love Neo Geo, and I wanted to try Blazing Star here just to see how the performance was, because the emulation sound quality can get very weird if it's not emulating correctly, and I was pleasantly surprised to find that everything was exactly as I was expecting. Now, if you notice a little bit of a line in the screen vertically, that is just because I am shooting this natively at 6K open gate, which means I can actually resolve the lines in the screen that make up the LCD. You're never going to see that in your naked eye, but it is something that the camera can pick up in the detail department. And going into Sonic Adventure 2 here, the city chase sequence, again, I was getting full frame rate, and the screen quality is quite good. For the price of this device, it really is delivering a good emulation experience on the 3D consoles. Of course, we'll touch on 2D in just a moment, but just to let you know, stuff like NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, they're all going to run great, and they're all going to be at full speed, because at this point in time, pretty much every emulation handheld out there is going to be able to run those. It's the Dreamcast and the PlayStation Portables that we really want to look at to see how much mileage you're going to get out of something like this. But I tested Crazy Taxi, I tested Sonic Adventure 2, and I tested Cosmic Smash, and they all ran great. I also appreciate the fact that this thing actually wakes up relatively quickly. You'll see here as I move the hinge back and forth, when it actually gets to that sleep stage, it goes to sleep, and then it wakes back up. If you leave it on the table for 15-20 minutes, it might take a second or two because it's gone into a deeper sleep, but it is fast and responsive. And I love with the Game Boy Advance bezel that pops up onto the screen when you're playing Game Boy Advance games, that it adheres to the proper aspect ratio, and it really does look great on the screen. The colors are accurate, they are saturated, they're what I'd like to see. Now, I have seen a couple comments online saying that the plastic quality of the Flip is decent but not great, and I would probably agree with that. It isn't bad plastic in any way, shape, or form. It gets the job done. It certainly isn't soft touch, but I really have no complaints about it. It does the job it needs to do. The hinge is secure, at least in my experience. But if you open up the hinge 5-10,000 times, maybe it'll get loose. If you give it to a kid, maybe they'll beat the hell out of it, but kids are notoriously rough on pretty much everything. Now, as far as PSP is concerned, my go-to test, God of War, it isn't quite getting full frame rate, unfortunately. So lesser games on PSP, a question I know I'm going to get a lot, might run at full frame rates, but some of the higher test games are dropping a few, and you will see here that the rendering resolution is 1x, and the only rendering backend I have is OpenGL. So I can't really move it over to Vulkan or anything to see if that would increase the frame rate. So it's getting close, and some games will be full speed, but it's not going to be the entirety of the library. But for me, the real takeaway was full speed Dreamcast on a really nice screen with analog sticks that work in a Game Boy Advance SP form factor that you can take on the go. That does it for me. It isn't the most powerful device in the world, but it's also not the most expensive device in the world. So it really is a nice middle ground between price and performance, and I really like the fact that it is that clamshell and is quite small while still featuring full controls as far as analogs are concerned. But you guys have been asking for more reviews like this, so leave me a comment down below and tell me if there's anything else out there you would like to see reviewed on the channel, because I know I review things differently than others. Kind of like to talk about the aesthetic and the hand feel, but I would say the Flip delivers for its price point. The screen is exceptional, the controls are very good, the D-pad is better than decent, the shoulder buttons are tactile and nice, and it runs Dreamcast at full speed as well as basically every other console underneath Dreamcast. I had no issues whatsoever. Obviously, I'm not showing every single test I did in here. You don't need to see it run a Super Nintendo game. You've seen that 100 times before, but it's definitely something that I can recommend if you want to pick up. And again, there is a link in the description below, and I make no money off it, so before you leave that shill comment, just think twice and go ahead and leave it anyway, because the algorithm wants that balada. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.